So all of you know that the Paseo Real water treatment plant has been going through a master plan process. And it's one of those things that Maury kept kind of reminding me about and asking me how it was going, what was going on. And I hadn't heard anything, so I kind of assumed it wasn't going very quickly, um, which was wrong. Um, and one of the things we have been discussing for a while is writing a letter, raising our hand and saying, hey, we'd like to be involved in that master plan process. Um, and I had been attempting lots of times. I swear this is one of the hardest letters I've tried to write, and I never really did write it, actually. And Maury well knows my struggles. In fact, this week we were going to work on it together. But Monday morning, got to the office, and all of you know that I worked with the city, worked with these guys. So I got to the office, and I'm sitting there thinking, let's change things up a little bit. So I made an appointment with Mike Dozier that afternoon, come out and talk to him about the process. So I went out. Number one, the place looks great. They cleaned it up. They trimmed it just looks wonderful. I mean, I've never seen it look so nice. And they have this large new educational training facility right across from the administrative building, which is just a really nice little complex that allows them to bring in a bunch of people at one time and train. This is a John Dupuy legacy. Excuse me. So I sat down with Mike and said, hey, the collaborative's going to write a letter, and it's going to go, probably to the city council and the mayor, and it's going to do all this stuff. And we're going to ask to be part of the planning process. And he looked at me, he says, well, the plan's just about done. It's going to be done in the next couple of weeks. And then I said, well, would it be possible for us to have a period of time, say 60 days, to review the plan before it's finalized? Absolutely no hesitation, sure. So he's going to go through the process, checking with Jesse, making sure it's okay with everybody else, but we should have an opportunity to look at the document before it gets finalized. And I'll know more by the end of the week, excuse me. So then we went into this discussion, and this what really kind of surprised me. How much that Dozier had thought about the idea of having a park, having trails, having places to park. And he pulls up this map and he starts pointing out, this would be a place where you could do parking. You don't have to do fancy parking lot. You can just do a gravel thing right here. And then there could be a trail there. And maybe we could connect to the river trail. And all these ideas that have been going through his head. And I was just pretty impressed. And very thoughtful. I mean, he's really been thinking about this in a way that I hadn't expected him to. But it was just nice to see and something I really appreciated. And so it's one of those things that now I'm kind of glad Bill's not here right now for the moment, because one of the things I want to tell you now that I've worked with the city for a year and a half, we have every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, we have a water operations meeting. And this is where about 20 guys from the facilities, the hydrologists, Jesse runs it, but everybody, there are about 20 guys that are participating in decisions about water. And one of the big things is deciding where the water is going to come from that week. And I got to tell you, these guys are really thoughtful. They're careful. They're smart. And it's one of those things that has impressed me so much is their ability to make good decisions. And it's one of those things where we always complain about, oh, all the apartments and all those things going on. Water doesn't have anything to do with that. That's the land use and a whole separate division of city government makes those decisions. Um, they're just responsible for finding water, and they do a really good job. Um, and one of the things that really has impressed me is how strong the Buckman well field is. So they'll run one well for a while, then they'll let it recharge, and it's amazing how quickly those things are recharging. So it's like that management of that water is done very carefully and smartly. And it's just one of those things that I think more people should understand that we got some really good people for the city making these decisions in terms of water. And we're looking at anywhere from 9 to 10 million gallons a day is what you do. But you know, some of it's the certain times of the year you do the Chama water, Chama's, San Juan Chama water, and then other parts you do this and then do that, and then snowpack isn't done, right, it hasn't provided as much, and now we're not even using the Canyon Road for a while, so we're storing water there to use later in the year. But it's very carefully thought out. And I just was very impressed and think we should share that story more often with other
Well,
people.
let me ask you a couple things, Carl. Um,
Sure.
One is, I guess, did Bill Dozier somehow get a hold of that old 2016 management plan that was sitting on the shelf that Rudy Garcia found by accident? Because it sounds like a bunch of the proposals that were there for, management of the lower river watershed / open space type opportunities, no? Um, so I guess that's kind of a rhetorical, but there might be some reinvention of the wheel going on there, but that's all positive. But I guess we will probably be discussing this afternoon, no, at the WPAC, the
Right.
this whole concept of a regional water authority. So it's cool to see the city is thinking this independently and thinking this on their own. But um, again, I'm always well, not just me, everybody else in the county is always looking at, oh, look at the city again going off on their own and determining what's going to happen to all the downstream users in the rest of the county, right? So maybe that this is, if that mindset is there now, maybe this is a good opportunity to be engaging them, whether or not it's part of a quote regional water authority unquote, but at least to continue the dialogue and cooperation between the city and the county. Maybe we got to look for that, um, I guess, continuity, or we got to look for promoting that bond of communication as we talked this afternoon at the WPAC. No,
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, it really is one of those things that is, it's not going to be quick. It's not going to be, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But if we do keep moving forward on the idea, I think it has the potential of becoming something significant, something that we all agree needs to be done.
well, here's the other question is, you knew I was going to ask you this too, in terms of a master plan for the Paseo Real plant. Absent John Dupuy with his de facto 14,001 mindset, is there any mention at all in that master plan of operating in accordance with ISO 14,001 or implementing that standard, even if they don't get certification for it? Or is that even a thing?
We haven't seen the master plan, so I can't
Ah,
respond to that. So we'll see.
okay.
I mean, it's not completed. And again, we've asked to see if we would be able to review the master plan after it's complete. Give us 60 days to look at it, make some comments. One of the things that Mike said was there's no design to build option. And I think that's something that the city should consider. Certainly, it was something that John wanted to consider. So, I mean, that'll be an opportunity for us to kind of raise our hand and say, we'd like you to consider this as well, and maybe give them some information about how to do that, if that would
Well,
be helpful.
dig this. In line with that idea of city county cooperation, whether it's a formalized regional water authority or not, did the collaborative ever become a RO, a registered organization with the county?
No, that's a great
Um,
idea. No, we have not.
that way we have a little better standing with the city in those types of communications, and we have a little more basis for the need to provide public comment or input, or how you'd look at it. But I just got a checklist out of county planning for it, so maybe I'll forward the same checklist if we want to pursue that. I'd recommend that we do that, so that we're not just out here unmoored, untethered, and that we get kind of a derelict outfit. We would get kind of probably some more support from the county, and when necessary, we could be invoking the voice of the BCC, and that might work really well, especially if, again, this afternoon, if these ideas about a regional water authority are coming together, this collaborative better have some input on that, because we already saw, a couple months ago, the I guess precautionary tale from Bernalillo County, and what happened to a few acequias down there, and what happened to a couple mutual domestics down there, that basically just had to take the knee later on and kiss the ring, after the fact. Which is, if we can learn anything from that experience, further south, then we should be involved with the process from its inception, not coming, to protest everything afterwards. No.
I agree. One of the things that Mike and I talked about too, which I thought was a good conversation, was the importance of having organizations like the Collaborative involved in helping to plan things for the future. And he really appreciated that. I mean, it's one of those things where we can really become be more cooperative and work together to do things that impact us and impact the future of water in our area. And it's one of those things I think that we've kind of evolved to now, is that we do have the ability to raise our hand and be listened to. But I agree with the RO completely and totally, registered organization, Darren. I think that's a great idea, because that does give us more of a voice. And in terms of the Regional Water Authority, it's one of those things, I think if you were to talk to the two staffs of the county and city, there would be some real agreement. Then we get into the political realm and it becomes a little more challenging and a little more difficult to do. With that, is Mr. Schneider available? Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Oh, hello all. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's always interesting to hear various perspectives of regionalization.
Good morning,
And
Bill.
it's just one of those things
Hey,
that you
Darren.
keep batting around and
Yep.
not off the record, but there is a core, and you missed my little compliments of the water division, but there is a core that we could build on, and it really is the professionals and within both the county and city, but the city's got a little more overwhelming engineers and hydrologists and a much larger staff. And there are a bunch of good guys that do smart things. And so with that, Bill, talk to us about the return flow credit process and what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess there's two components to our program. So I'll start with the San Juan Chama Return Project. We have a draft EA that will be going to the federal agencies next week. So that hopefully will start the clock on review cycles. The reason I'm late, I was on a call with the Forest Service that ran late, so I apologize. I think everyone's aware of what's happening right now with the mass exodus of employees and the bad work environment. So we'll see if we're able to effectively get a review cycle within sort of the requirements, which in the case of BLM will be 45 days. So the hope is then to address comments and have an EA out for public comment. We'll say September 1st.
Any comments?
Yep. Nothing for
So-
Darren? I can't believe that.
Well, I was just, no, I'm just mulling it over going, okay, September, that's perfect. I might be back just in time for public comment period, on a draft EA.
We'll hold it for you specifically, Darren.
You're very kind. You're very kind.
Now, more importantly, I think, and this is something I know the coalition and the collaborative have been really encouraging the city to attempt another pursuit of return flow credits for waters that are discharged to the lower Santa Fe River and potentially including San Juan Chama water, which effectively then would eliminate the need for the project if we would be allowed to essentially release effluent at Paseo Real in the Santa Fe River above Cienega and divert a like amount at the Buckman direct diversion. And this concept's been in place since I came to the city. It's something we've had on and off conversations with the state engineer's office and ISC regarding that request. The door has opened again, so I guess in a positive sense, we are having conversations that we've agreed and we're going to try to meet. Jesse, in fact, has provided 5 dates to the state engineer, to the ISC director. Now we have escalated it to Nat and general counsel. So
Wow.
effectively, those conversations are happening. I don't have much to share other than the opportunity is still there, but there's a lot of challenges, and I can touch on any of those if you like.
Well, that's all super positive. Let me ask you this, Bill, is in the context of this being, I guess, a Bureau of Reclamation, involvement and a federal project, is anybody from, for lack of a better term, our side pitching the efficiency aspect of it, of not having to use federal funds for construction, et cetera, or commit local government funds, be it from the city or the county on a joint agreement or whatever, but for letting the natural course of the river do its job and let Mother Nature do the work and save the taxpayer some money to put it in the government efficiency context. Is anybody speaking to it from that angle?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the quote unquote win-win, Darren, that I think everyone's latching onto. And again, we're coordinating everything right now through Tanya Trujillo, and so she's the deputy state engineer, but she's effectively reports to the governor, right?
Right. Right.
And so she's spearheading this. She certainly is an ally to the acequias, understands the needs of cultural and environmental uses of water. The challenge again, Darren, is what hasn't changed is one, Texas v. New Mexico. There's a lot of scrutiny right now on the state of New Mexico relative to the Rio Grande. So the question that we're trying to creatively answer to the satisfaction of all skeptics, which would be Texas, would be, and potentially MRGCD, is does that water that is released from Paseo Real make it to the Rio Grande? And we're looking to immediately redivert it at the BDD, and if there's a lag, or if there are other, and I'm going to put this in proper context, other diverters that may be utilizing that water, how do we overcome those obstacles? And so these are the conversations we're having. And I could go into details on how we're proposing to do this, which I think is hugely beneficial to the lower Santa Fe River. The question is what would be acceptable, and then then doing the math and the hydrology of what losses would the city have to suffer if we would even be allowed to do this, and can we justify that? versus the expense of the pipeline. And that's really going to be the crux of all this.
Bill, can I ask if there are any sort of quantitative metrics being incorporated for the co-benefits of return flow credits through the Santa Fe River?
Yeah, so you're saying basically how to quantify the environmental benefit, the cultural benefit, traditional ag, or our yeah. So we're not there yet. Like similar to like with the pipeline itself, when we did the quote unquote triple bottom line analysis, and again, I know some of the community didn't feel like that went far enough, but it was an attempt. That will have to happen, Maury. It's just a matter right now. Quite frankly, we're dealing with the legal hurdles.
That's
Mostly,
an important place to start.
There's intervening water users at between where we want to divert at the BDD and where the water, quote unquote, reaches the Rio Grande in some portion at the confluence of the Rio Grande and the Santa Fe River. And so there's a lot of sensitivities there. And so we're doing our best. Trust me. To Darren's point, we would rather spend the money on the Paseo Real upgrades or replacement, whatever's decided, versus the pipeline. Like to me, that's a no-brainer if we can get return flow credits of a satisfactory amount.
so this is where, well, first let me ask you, what has MRGCD come out with as far as a position on that, or are they still like scratching their heads over it?
Yeah, we haven't asked them to have a position yet. They've been debriefed. I've spoke to their CEO. We may go to their board at some point, but I think at this point, it's premature, Darren, and we don't want to have any fuel to the fire. The question we're trying to address right now is Texas v. New Mexico.
Okay, and then, all right, so that being what it is, then I think it's important too, while we have time, because the litigation is all, you know, at the forefront, maybe then in the back room is when Bobby jumps in and makes sure that the city has access to the LiDAR observations that have been done that are giving us some, at least, indication of the hydrology that works to support the proposal, no?
So when you say LiDAR, you know, that's basically high resolution topography, right? How does that help us?
No, it's not. It's working with lasers and the lasers are, you know, it's usually done with an aerial, you know, with a small plane, and the LiDAR, the lasers, you know, go into the earth. So it's one of the ways that the archaeologist who's working in Chaco has been able to photograph the roads that come out of Chaco. There's no other way to do it. And LiDAR also is able to see, you know, the old riverbeds, you know, and things like that. So that would be awesome if you all would use that as part of the, you know, the research that you're doing.
Yeah, we're using it right now on Nichols actually today. So certainly familiar with the technology. I'm not clear as to where the benefit would be in terms of understanding seepage losses. See, the challenge we have, and Darren, you know, be careful what you wish for, right? The idea of this comprehensive return flow plan that if we can get it there is going to put a lot of monitoring in place downstream. And I just hope people are prepared for that, because there's a lot of diversions right now that are unmetered that people are going to have a wake-up call. I don't know how else to say it.
Yep, well, and that speaks again to, you know, unresolved adjudications and all that. So from a very mercenary perspective, I'm not worried about that. You know, in La Bajada, we're pretty much one of the only ironclad acequias that have had our adjudication done back in 1976, you know, with Judge Donnelly. But yeah, I can see that may create a little trouble, but I think it's important too to note that LiDAR technology has the capability of, remember, we've been talking a long time about the anecdotal knowledge of the subterranean flow. The LiDAR is actually able to do it by focusing on different return levels, and hitting the bottom and being able to show water. So that's available
Yeah.
there.
We're doing an analysis right now, Darren, to that point. I think it's probably going to be more beneficial, and I bet Aaron has a lot of experience with this, but I don't know what the outcome will be, so it's a little premature. So we're doing a phase 1, a test run, but it's a NV, it's a National Vegetative Index. So it's using a bunch of different spectrums of satellite imagery to look at changes in vegetation types over time.
Wow.
Also looking at some satellite temperature, which I think in the winter months could be strongly indicative of groundwater springs and seeps, to help map some of those. So again, we're doing our best within the constraints of technologies and existing budgets to try to advance the science. So I'll come back to this
That's
group
great.
with an update. I have to think it'll probably be 6 or 8 weeks before I could say, well, this is what we attempted and here's what the initial results show.
And Bill, it's not expensive to do the LiDAR. It's like, hydrologists should be aware of 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 how to access it, because the USGS has it, on
Yeah.
their
Yeah, Bobby, thank
access
you.
it through that.
We're literally doing it right now. We're flying LiDAR surveys over Nichols Reservoir to map the basal elevation of the reservoir so we could get more accurate volumetrics. So absolutely, and that's being done with drones. So it's certainly something we're familiar with. So the question is to take it downstream, downriver. Now, this is where, Andrew, this is part of that lower Santa Fe River planning process. These are the types of things we want to be a participant in. And the question is who and how we accomplish that.
Hey, Bill, has the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources been involved at all?
So we met with Stacy about a month ago. So we're exploring, historically, the USGS and the Bureau had a more expansive monitoring well network to look at variability and changes in the water table. So we're looking to partner with them to collect more robust data because we want to update the regional administrative groundwater flow model, the MOD flow model, the numerical flow model that represents the aquifer throughout the region. But it's a very crude approximation, and we want greater resolution because we're doing all this sort of, and you're aware of this, Carl, sustainable aquifer management program. And so to get to the point, Stacy was very interested in that, obviously has a vested interest. And we did look in the Cienega area and identified a series of wells that potentially we could expand the monitoring well network. So that would be their level of involvement. We're just trying to come to an agreement of first step is going out and doing field recon with the state engineer's office who have jurisdiction on access to see what wells are still in existence and accessible. And then with that, then how would we partner to maybe even invest with transducers and try to automate some of this and get real-time monitoring and look at spring response and aquifer response to recharge events. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's just a matter of what's going on with the administration's not helping because the USGS has kind of just said no moss and they're kind of throwing their hands up. But my hope, Carl, again, would be this next FY 25-26 is have an expanded monitoring program, including with the county down into Cienega.
Bill, a couple of other ideas. I mean, I know that BLM is doing some sort of monitoring in the lower watershed, which I'm sure you're working with them on. But the other thought is Alex Webster from UNM, she's doing a lot of work in the upper watershed with like isotope tracking and stuff, which indicates, whether it's groundwater or surface water, things like that. And she's expressed interest to me in expanding her work into the middle and lower parts of the watershed. I know that she gets NSF funding, and so I'm
Yeah,
not
right.
sure what her status is as well, but I know that she is really looking to use the Santa Fe watershed as her kind of representative watershed, and so she might have some resources and some alternate monitoring techniques to add to that the overall landscape of what y'all are trying to do, and the city already has a relationship with her, so just another idea to throw out.
No, you just reminded me of something, and back to Stacy and the Bureau. The Stacy proposed to do, and this would be a perfect segue, is she's like, it's about time we resurrected the EBTAG. You may be too young to remember this, Maury, but there used to be this, it's called EBTAG, stood for Espanola Basin Technical Advisory Group, and it involved a lot of various organizations. And she was really pitching that we should be doing that as a sort of transparency to get all this information out in the public domain. So I love your idea.
Now, there's also Dr. Alex Reinhardt with New Mexico Tech, who's done some of the studies already. He's the one that made a presentation a couple years to the collaborative and explained that, yeah, the water does reach. There's no question that the water reaches the river. And he did, I think it was isotopes that he'd used. I'm not positive. But I'm wondering if we could draw him back in and see if he's interested in being involved. He and Stacy are the ones that made the presentation. The other question I have, and I know this is a hot one, is given its location, it would be really nice to have Cochiti involved. And I know that throws up a bunch of red flags. But I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile for the collaborative on a lower level to reach out and say, hey, this is happening, and see if there's some possibility of them being involved. And I know I'm going to hear from Byron.
I would only suggest that you make that that you get somebody on a higher level of government, preferably federal, to make that approach, because just of the policy on their own perception of sovereignty. So that's what I would recommend, is that we either have
Gotcha.
I think Bill can speak to this, and anybody, probably Andrew can speak to this, is that approaches by the city and the county are generally dismissed out of hand because it's not considered government to government. They want to speak to the federales. So but along those same lines, there's a new contact there, a fellow by the name of Earl Conway, who is a Corps of Engineers retiree that has now been, I guess, contracted to Cochiti as a consultant. And so maybe that's a venue that is worth pursuing. He's consultant for their natural resources department, right? And conservation. So maybe that's a good venue to pursue and let him take the ask to the tribal government. Let me see if I can get you contact information for him, and then that might be a phone that gets answered, so to speak.
Got it.
What are we trying to accomplish at this stage with Cochiti? Is there a goal?
Get them involved. I mean, that water obviously goes through their land. And I know when we had Reinhardt and Stacy a few years ago, they said there probably need to be test wells on Pueblo land. So that was my only interest in maybe engaging them. But certainly we don't want to do something that isn't positive.
Darren, have you had any recent conversations with the state engineer's office regarding Cochiti and the La Bajada diversion? Because what I'm hearing is not very favorable for you.
Well, I'm sure they're complaining about, as you had mentioned before, over appropriation or this or that, but you got to keep in mind that Public Law 98-344, which put those lands in trust for them in 1985, I guess, has a specific section, I believe it's section 8, that says that act of Congress did not convey any new water rights than existed in the state in 1984. So whatever complaint they have is without basis or foundation. So it might be some static, it might be laying foundation for future litigation, not sure, but I think the big ask then realistically, if Carl, if you're considering outreach to that sovereign, is that's specifically what you would be asking for would be positioning of monitoring wells, you know?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll talk about it a little bit more before going
And-
forward with
And
anything.
if that's the goal, and again, that's why I was asking Carl, because sometimes things are well intended and then we get down into dredging up old historic arguments and not really staying focused on where we're collectively trying to accomplish success. There,
Understood.
we identified that there are a bunch, if you're seeking groundwater wells on the Pueblo, there are a bunch that were installed under contract to the Army Corps of Engineers in 1991. Predates me. I don't know if they're still in existence.
That would be super worthwhile to check out. And it only strikes me that if they were installed in 91, they were probably put there to monitor the retreat of the waters that came up all the way to La Bajada in 1987 when they did their capacity test. And so that event had water being retained, like I say, up to the spillway, but coming all the way near the village of La Bajada. The problem with holding water at original design capacity was that the earthen dam itself was allowing seepage into the fields below and raising the water table to where it swamped out the alfalfa fields and that. No, so they've never put it back up to that level again, specifically because they swamped the remaining agriculture. So, but that's interesting to hear that in 91 they're there. That's one that's worth asking the Corps of Engineers if they're even looked at anymore, or if they're serviceable or functional or what.
Yeah. Yeah. So I even have a title for a report. Darren, thank you. And that's exactly the purpose and intent of those piezometers. So I just got to get my butt down and meet with Ryan Grunfeld at the Corps and try to see if we can get to their library and see if the data is available, and then whether they if they're still, to your point, serviceable.
Bill, is there anything the collaborative can do to help you?
Probably not. I'd gladly
Okay.
share with you the reference if someone wants to push ahead. It's on my list to do. It's
Okay, well,
important to
keep
us
us
as
in
well.
mind. If there's any way that we can assist you in your efforts, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Carl. Yep.
Okay. Oh, I got to tell you, this is very impressive. Bill, you've done a great job in explaining a whole lot of things very quickly, and I really deeply appreciate the information and the work that you're doing. It's one of those things that's kind of like behind the scenes, and we're wondering what's going on, and all of a sudden go, wow, this is pretty cool. This is pretty neat. These guys are doing some good things. So yeah, it's deeply appreciated. And again, one of the things you missed earlier was my compliments of the water division and the decision-making process and how careful and thoughtful you folks are in terms of managing water. As someone who's been on the opposite side for a number of years. It's reassuring to find that we've got some really smart people making good decisions. So thank you, and certainly convey that to the rest of the staff, and I will too. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Again, let us know if there's anything we can do to help out. Any other questions for Mr. Schneider? Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it a lot.
Appreciate you back. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bill.
Bill.
So next is the WPAC update. Darren, you want to do that? Andrew?
I
Who
would
like to-
defer to Andrew on that because I'm still not even thoroughly familiarized with the agenda for this afternoon. So, Andrew.
Microphone. Yeah. Thanks everybody for inviting me, and some of my coworkers are actually planning to join, but they've got some other things going on right now. Yeah. So this evening, presentations will be Michael Carr, County Stormwater MS4 program update, and the other presentation is Dr. Jonathan Frenzen from the Santa Fe Fireshed Coalition. He's on their he's on the board, I believe, on their communications committee for the Fireshed. The presentation on the Tesuque Fireshed. I'm sorry, what was it? Sorry, Tesuque Peak Fire Camera Initiative. And from our county fire department, we'll have attending Deputy Chief Jeffrey Carroll will actually be coming to the meeting either in person or virtually. And that's the two presentations, and we'll have a recap of any input from the BCC following April 29th presentation of the first quarterly report. The only comment was from Commissioner Green, and Commissioner Green proposed that the county put some money aside to contract an independent facilitator for Bishop's Lodge and the Tesuque community, being including, of course, the Protect Tesuque Coalition. He would like to hire a facilitator to again to assist with discussions between the lodge and the community. And there's also a hearing, I guess, going on from May 19th to the 23rd that week. 5 days as NMED is hearing on the lodge, and the community will also be participating in that. So again, it's become back to the forefront of conversation attention. That's the only input from BCC. But and generally, I guess some of what we're hearing from elected leaders of the county is that again, we want to keep pursuing exploring ways for more collaboration in the water sector between the county and the city. An idea was floated also about maybe re-engaging the city's water conservation committee for as an avenue for dialogue between the county and the city. So WPAC across the WCC. That was floated in our staff meeting. Brian Snyder, he thought that the WCC was maybe not so relevant for discussing collaboration in stormwater and wastewater because they are water supply and conservation. However, stormwater is a resource, right? And wastewater is too. So they, to me, they are directly related to water conservation and supply. So anyway, that's the update from myself. Thanks.
Well, I regret to say I won't be at the WPAC meeting. I have a PT session I need to go to this afternoon, so I'll miss that. I do have some ideas and thoughts, kind of carryovers from the previous WPAC about stormwater management that I plan to share with Michael as soon as I kind of get my act together. But there are a series of things I think that we can do to really manifest the ability to keep as much water in the aquifer as we can, and really do things to recharge. I really, it's one of those things where we had the Santa Fe watershed Association adopt a Royal program, and I think the entire county should be doing that. And slowing down water and making sure that we're recharging the aquifer as best we can. And certainly conservation, if you look what the city has done, they're pretty impressive, and we need to do the same thing in the county. And that takes a whole lot of education and understanding of people to appreciate what they can do to help recharge the aquifer. So that's something that's kind of on my radar and something I hope to help out with. Darren, you got any comments?
Not on the I guess WPAC generally, but you just sparked an idea. You know, traditionally, let's say up on the Mesa, stormwater or rain events like what we've just been experiencing have been captured with check dams, right? To
Yeah.
fill some of the arroyos or just lower basins, to keep that water for livestock watering. No. So, and maybe this is something positive that comes out of that Forest Guardians project where they had put ridge and swale features in the channel to facilitate whatever the heck else was going on up there. You know, maybe that was an inappropriate location for that and dechannelized the river to the detriment of the communities. But we know for sure after Steve Mastovich's special master's report back there, I guess that was 2013 or something, that there was 200 acre feet of water being impounded by that type of intervention. So maybe that's something to consider, is not overdoing it, not overkill, but check dams in some of the arroyos, or like you say, to slow the flow, not to stop it or create mosquito breeding ponds or whatever, but to slow the flow enough so that there's a chance for recharge up there. No?
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, so next on the agenda is the Lower Santa Fe River tours that I've been doing, watershed tours I've been doing for a while. And I know, Andrew, you've got one planned for the people who are doing the spring restoration planning. But I do want to, and I'm not sure how many people of the WPAC are going to be on that, but I would like to open up to WPAC members to take the typical tour that we've done. We go through, you know, Kaya, Deborah, and then to Christy and Kelsey's place, and then to Kier and Carol's and the Rael, and then to Trace Rios, and then to stop at Colandrinas. That's the last stop. And a real quick update, I told people before we started recording, is that I went before the COPAC last night to talk about Rios, and I think there's some real interest there in the possibility of doing something pretty special. And so that's actually, there are a whole lot of water issues related to that. One of the things we'd like to see is the possibility of a wastewater treatment plant that would help the lower Santa Fe, the lower La Cienega area. We actually did some calculations at one point, and there's somewhere between 250 and 300 homes that we could serve, and we'd be able to reuse that water for other purposes. So that's kind of part of the equation, but there's some positive movement. Alonzo is finishing up the TDR process, which is the key for reacquiring the land. And once we reacquire the ranch, then there'll be a whole lot of opportunities to do some things pretty significantly. And if anybody's looking for a place to rent for a organization, there's a nice little farmhouse out on Trace Rios that it could be available for a nonprofit office. So anyway, it's one of those things we keep moving forward, and so we'll see. And the other tours I want to do, and I got some very exciting responses from both Mike Dozier and Jesse. It's the more formal tours of the BDD and the wastewater treatment plant. Some of you have already gone on that, but I'd like to make them more frequent and really do a more kind of formal presentation in terms, and I wanted to end it up with Jesse doing maybe an hour of question and answers, just sitting there because he's so good at that. And he really actually likes to do that. He is on some level a teacher, and he likes to do that. And so that's one of the things I want to include in those tours is him sitting down and people just ask him straight up questions that they are concerned about, things they want to learn about, and questions about water, because he's pretty good about answering those things. Any questions about the tours?
I think, Carl, if you can be patient with me, I'm trying to get my calendar together and that, but I would like to do one more down in La Bajada, particularly because we got a lot of interest at the last WPAC meeting. And so maybe even if it's just WPAC, we get some heads down here. Because Tres Rios is exactly that. It's the confluence of those three streams. And then I guess you see ultimately from this village's perspective, you know, where it ends up. And it's always a reminder to the county that we're out here, the southwesternmost, you know, outpost of the county. And how many people remember at the last one where we're like, wow, we didn't realize the river continues. And it also supports the idea of the natural course of the river returning to the Rio Grande instead of, you know, how many people said, oh, we thought the river stopped at the city limits, or we thought the river stopped at the shit plant, or, you know, and so the better we can do to disabuse anyone of that illusion, then the better. But I probably, like I say, I probably have one more chance before I think the 18th. Let me pin that down. I'll try and get back to the group. No,
It was such a great tour. It was fascinating. And again, part of it is the tour, part of it is the conversations. People
right.
talking to each other, you know, and going, hey, yeah. And I go back to the time that I took the city staff out to Tres Rios, and Alonzo's doing one of his stories, and Bill Schneider's standing right next to him. And uh, Alonzo says, you know, if you do that pipeline project, this river's going to die. And it was like all of a sudden everybody just kind of stopped for a second and went, oh, really? You know, it's like it was a reality check. It was one of those things that really made an impression and I think did something pretty special. So those conversations are good. And then we need to keep doing them.
Let me ask one real quick question. Is were we able to, and maybe see this is where being a RO facilitates, because we don't have to depend on doing the outreach or old email lists or whatever, because they get notice of county doings. Had we invited, I see Agua Frias here and La Bajadas here, so we got the top end and the bottom end, right? But what I don't see is the heads from Cienega or Cieneguilla. So was there, you know, outreach to the LCVA or to the Acequia Guicu or Capilla Vieja or to the other Acequias, or how are we managing that to date?
Well, you know, Andrea's always she's part of the kind of the she is kept informed and receives all the information. I always copy her.
Okay, I think their website's been down for a couple weeks or something, so maybe that's what it is. But she's a great conduit for everybody else up there. That's who specifically I was thinking about. You know, Andrea, JJ, Robert, them, and I know Robert's talking closely with Andrew lately on Cienega specific issues. But in terms of you know, getting this communities collaborative back to the communities like we were talking about. And I think maybe having the in-person meetings again, it makes that a lot easier, especially if they're, you know, either in Cienega or the south side. No?
You know, we also talked about inviting the Acequias from the metropolitan area, from the city to be involved. And we do have a contact now to do that. And so I'll be happy to make that connection, invite them to join us, and so we can join the entire river and all be on the same page in terms of wanting to do what we can to protect and preserve the flow of water in the river.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool is right. Okay, Maury, you got a question?
I had a question which is probably for Andrew, but I'm wondering what the relationship is between the spring restoration project that's happening now and the lower watershed planning process. Are those kind of dovetailing, or is there a plan in the future to build on the current project to restart the lower river planning process? What's that looking like right now?
Mhm. Thanks, Maria. Well, I mean, these subjects, they completely overlap. In terms of getting an update on that study, Travis is the project manager for the Lower Santa Fe River planning study. And as we know, Travis he's doing 4 positions right now, and so we're
Wait, just to be clear, Travis is overseeing the lower river planning study or the spring restoration?
no, I'm sorry, yeah. So the last idea preliminary report to the springs restoration. I'm the project manager at the city. Travis is the project manager for the Lower Santa Fe River study, and we're still waiting for an update from him. And he is again, Travis Soderquist, the deputy utilities director. He's covering 4 positions still currently, and we still have, as you know, a huge shortage of trained technical people in the water sector, from engineers to GIS to hydrologists, and we're trying to fill more positions. So hopefully we'll have an update from him soon. We're trying to be a little more strategic at everybody and how often we contact him, emails and phone calls, because he opens up his email every morning and there's 50 emails, and he just picks the most important ones and what he thinks is a priority and addresses that. And the next morning he opens his calendar again to see what he needs. So anyway, we will we'll be engaged with Public Works more on the study, because again, it's important to you guys, the TCC, to the city, as Bill Snyder said as well.
So just so I understand, it's still happening and the funding is still there for it, but it just has paused because of some staff capacity shortages right now.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's
Okay.
to answer your question more directly. Yeah, my understanding, that's the current status.
Great, thanks.
Maury, I appreciate you bringing that up. It's kind of been lost in the shuffle a little bit, but there is an agreement between the city and county to support that, and so I think it's apropos to bring that back to their attention on some level, and maybe we just slide it into the the spring restoration. I don't know. We can talk about that, but that's a really good topic to discuss and really debate a little bit. That's good. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Any status update on your grant?
Kind of. Yeah, I did just receive an email from the Bureau of Reclamation this morning during our meeting. So I am still in contact with a project officer from the Bureau of Reclamation, which gives me some hope. They are slowly requesting documentation and updating budgets and things like that. So I am cautiously hopeful that our grant might actually go through. And as a refresher, the Watershed Association applied for a cooperative watershed management program grant in September of last year to do a full watershed management plan. This would be kind of a high level sort of umbrella plan that consolidates or synthesizes previous research and previous plans and connects the geographies of the upper, middle, and lower watershed, because we see those geographies often being siloed and kind of focused on separately. And so the goal of this plan would be to synthesize that and to identify, excuse me, Carl, you passed me your frog.
I did.
But yeah, it would be obviously more general than a lot of the plans that are happening on a smaller scale, but the goal would be to connect those and to offer some best management practices for ongoing work being done. So my intention is definitely to be complementary with the other plans that are happening, to connect them better, but I want to learn as much about these other plans as I can, so that we're not replicating efforts or being redundant, but that we're supporting and amplifying each other's work, so that we can get further along. So if things go according to the timeline, the original timeline, this grant that we are receiving would start in September, and it's a 3-year grant. And hopefully by the end of the grant, we would have a plan. We would have some priority restoration areas, and even some first drafts of designs that would be ready for future grants to then, you know, kind of be a ready-made application for future funding opportunities. So yeah, that's definitely, it's not dead and I'm not holding my breath, but I will keep you all updated as I learn more, but I basically won't confident that it's happening until it's over.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely keep our fingers crossed. And so the next thing is the organizational structure of our, and I think we've already kind of done it. We have kind of a de facto executive, and I'm not sure what we want to call it, executive committee, a board. I'm not sure what it is, but I think that we, actually many of them are on the call right now. And so it's just one of the things I'd really like to formalize and to share with other people, specifically the coalition, to talk about how we kind of restructured things. And I think it's really important that people understand that the information, decisions, direction is given by the committee and not by an individual. And so I think that's really important in terms of people appreciating our direction and things that we want to accomplish. But it really is a collaboration, that we really have people all kind of talking together and making decisions and telling me what to do. How's that?
Right. And just as a matter of, I guess, history, is remember that there's never been a vote. There's never been points of order since this collaborative originally formed. It's all been happening on consensus. And so I don't know how to exactly nail that down and explain that that's the procedure, right?
Yeah.
But however you can capture that, Carl, I'll leave that wordsmithing to you. Particularly if we have to express it to the county for RO status. But it's it's always been consensus based and true collaboration. So whether it's staff people, whether it's from different agencies, whether it's outside consulting ideas, or whether it's the community members ourselves, we've always operated on consensus, and I've never really seen like a crazy form of dissent,
Nope.
Sometimes conversation gets spirited, but anyhow.
I will
think
just, oh,
go ahead.
Carl. I Darren, your comments just make me think of a recent learning experience for me and my own organization, that we just got a new board member who is very experienced with writing bylaws and things like that. And we had a clause in our bylaws that said that we are a consensus-driven organization. And I think everyone assumed this is great. And my new board member brought up a really interesting point, which is that there's a fine line between genuine consensus and kind of working through issues versus peer pressure that can silence voices sometimes. And so as we might be thinking about putting some of the collaborative's approaches into words or into writing, I just wanted to throw that out because I hadn't really thought of it before. and it was really interesting, that we still make room for dissent and make sure that we are creating a
Absolutely.
space for those spirited discussions and not stifling other opinions, but yes, also doing the work to really find common ground together and move forward. So just an interesting thought that I've been thinking about recently in ways that I hadn't expected.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. The other thing I'd say, just as a precaution, is, and some of you guys will remember this too, is even with the WPAC, the more organized or bylaw driven that we make it, then the more we become subject to the letter of the Open Meetings Act, and we have to start considering things like notice. So just a couple of points to consider. Of course, I would recommend as loose as we can keep it loose, and avoid words like committee or subcommittee or quorum or these kind of things. But I think it's super important to keep that, while keeping that in mind, that we keep our consciences attuned as well, and guard against, like Maury's saying, either peer pressure or chilling effect or this type of thing.
Great information. And I think the RO process application process will give us an opportunity to kind of clarify some of these things too. So I'll start working on that and plan to have it to you within a month or so. We'll see. Very cool. I like that. Nicely done, Darren. And Maury, appreciate it. So any news from the Santa Fe Watershed Association?
Well, I think I shared my main news, but the other news is that we are having our 3rd annual Love Your Watershed Day this Saturday, May 10th at Vargas Park from 11 to 2. And so I invite all of you to stop by. We're going to have some great live music that's free. We've got a lot of really great partner organizations tabling, but not only are they tabling, they each have really interesting and fun educational activities that they're offering. So would highly recommend coming and connecting with a lot of our partner orgs. I think we've got 22 or so. Andrew will be there, and a really broad array of partners from across the watershed. And so I think that's really the goal of this event, is to, again, bring together folks from across the watershed and to bring together not only, organizations, but people. So, I think it's an important time to remind folks of the different geographies of the watershed and think about not only where our water's coming from, but where our water's going and what our relationship is to the water cycle and each other. So if you want to stop by or extend the invitation to anyone you think might be interested, I would love to see you there, and anyone else. And then we've got we're wrapping up field trips for we've had a couple canceled this week, as you might expect, but yep, we're plugging along, and we've got some other workshops coming up this summer, and so keeping busy, and I will let you all know about that grant and how it progresses. The one other thing that I forgot to say, because we all needed one more plan, is that there's also a group of partners who it started as signatories to the 2010 Municipal Watershed Management Plan. And it's since expanded a little bit to other partners, but the partners have agreed to update that Municipal Watershed Management Plan. And so I'm also kind of facilitating those efforts, and it's in the very early stages, but I can keep you updated with that as well.
Okay. And I will let you know about the review of the Paso Real master plan. Technically, between our group, it's not a master plan. It's really as Mike described it, it's just comparison about whether to rehab the existing facility or build a new one. that to me is not a master plan. That's just a comparison and debate. And so it's, anyway, that's just a personal observation. It really isn't a master plan. It would
Hey,
be a little
Carl.
more.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to contribute some review on your, for the community here on that one. I'm interested to
Bless
see
you.
what's coming along.
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yeah. Happy to help.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Aaron. Really appreciate that. Anything else for today, folks?
I just wanted to flag, Williams.
Yeah, I have a history presentation on May 15th, which is the actual San Isidro Day. And it's just at our San Isidro Parish Center. And, that's Agua Fria Street and just going south of San Isidro Crossing and then all the way to the back. And it's a fundraiser for our new church building. And I guess the second thing is, we've been working a lot with Santa Fe County on, well, we had a subdivision that came out. It's a major subdivision because it's more than 24 units. It's 30 units, but it's a home-wise subdivision. And they really, Jennifer Jenkins presenting, right? They really circumvented our community plan. And we didn't know that they were able to do this. And so we're saying to ourselves, well, maybe we need to update our community plan. And because they're building affordable housing, right? For $100,000 homes, they're able to get density bonuses and this type of thing. And they don't need to go to the planning commission. They can go straight to the Board of County Commissioners. And it's kind of the county process that that they're able to
Circumvent.
well, like when they present to the Board of County Commissioners, they don't actually present as much information as they do to the Planning Commission or the Technical Advisory Committee. And I think it's because they don't want to burden the Board of County Commissioners with a lot of information. But if this is going to be the only public hearing, then the general public is being cheated from all the information. So our commissioner, Lisa Kari Stone, was saying that, well, then we need a ordinance that kind of fixes this problem. So that's kind of what we've been busy doing in Agua Fria, because, otherwise your community plan that we spent, 3 years doing, 36 meetings, it's kind of null and void, if you can just go around it.
And they don't have to present to the village association itself either.
Yeah, well, they do that, but we have no authority like we used to have when we were a local development review committee. We actually would do a recommending letter to the Board of County Commissioners, yay or nay, and we don't have that ability now. So on Sunday, May 18th at noon, there will be a noon mass, and it's a San Isidro feast day and river blessing. So I would say we'd probably be going at 1:15, 1:20 towards the river with our sheriff's directing traffic there. And the Fiesta Council is supposed to go out, so that always makes it real colorful. And I guess we won't have any water this year. I don't know. We have the request into the River Commission, and I think this with the recent moisture, I got 5.5 inches of rain in the last 5 days. I mean,
Wow.
I think that's the most I've ever recorded across 5 days.
Amazing.
William, I was at the River Commission meeting where they almost approved the hydrograph, but that their chair, they had kind of an unexpected thing happen with their transition to a new chair. And so he wasn't there, and so they weren't able to approve the hydrograph. But the living river flows are going to be extremely low this year because the city had 20% snowpack, which means that the living river will get 300 acre feet for the entire year. And so they're looking at peak flows of like 2 to 3 CFS, which likely won't make it down to Agua Fria, unless the channel is very saturated, so it's making it further than it normally does with that volume. But it could be that if there are non-living river flows, or if there's a storm that San Isidro can organize, then maybe the river can flow. But yeah, unfortunately, I think I am surprised that they haven't maybe been in touch or gotten back to you. But my impression was that the living river flows themselves are not going to make it down very far this year.
Well, thank you, Maury.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be the bearer of that news.
Well, it wouldn't be the first year. I mean, we've had some pretty dry years, but then we've had some pretty wet ones that the river was just kind of raging through there.
Hey, William,
Yes.
what time is the San Isidro ceremony at the?
I would say 1:15 to 1:20.
All right, okay, you did say that. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Because it's going to take us a while to get from the church to the river and the procession.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else today, folks? Thank you all. As always, this is one of my favorite groups to be part of. And we look forward to doing some good things for water. So thank you all. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
you.
Carl.
See ya.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.